So tell me about your fascination with Bigfoot and how you've been exploring Bigfoot through your poetry.
Well, my fascination with Bigfoot, I wrote my first poem like 2 years before Bigfoot really presented himself as like a huge presence to me. I wrote a poem about Bigfoot and I was done with it, I thought, and I moved on to other stuff. And then 2 years later, I was dealing with some difficult things in my life, big, I guess what you would call big hairy things, and I did what poets do when they're dealing with big hairy things in their lives. You write about them, and when I started writing about them or trying to write about them, and trying to find a vehicle to write about these subjects, and there was a lot of them, Bigfoot he just sort of loomed out of the forest and became the vehicle for me to be able to write and talk about these things in my life, and he stayed with me, and he has been with me ever since. Since I started working on this book, dealing with things in metaphor, because that's what poets do. They write in metaphor, and Bigfoot is that metaphor for all of those things that people have in their lives that are difficult, that are scary, that you're not quite sure whether they're real or not real. Those kinds of things. Whether it's addiction or mental illness or death or whatever you're dealing with, it's this presence, and it's this presence that's behind you in the dark, a shadow, whatever, and when you look over your shoulder to see what that presence is, it's not there, but it's always there. And that's sort of what Bigfoot is. He's there, but he's always in the tree line where you can't quite exactly see him. And that's what those problems are, or were for me at the time, and I think are for anybody. Trying to capture those things and bring them out in the open is incredibly difficult. And the poems were my opportunity to write about them and write about that struggle to see those things clearly. And I don't know if I've ever seen him clearly, but certainly those poems are my attempts to, my Bigfoot sightings, if you will, to deal with those kinds of issues that people have in their lives. "13 Ways of Looking at Bigfoot." 1. In the pines along US 41, Bigfoot stitches the afternoon dark then bright, then dark again. 2. Salmon run in the dead river. Upstream, Bigfoot waits, hungry for silver spawn.
I just love Bigfoot because I know that he's real and he's just in a different dimension. And I have experienced him and her, like, just being by me when I went to Ohio Serpent Mound for a festival a couple of 3 years back or whatever. And like I went there were like lots of people talking about Sasquatch and looking for him and seeing like where he would live and all this stuff, and even had a little magic stick that I used to help invoke him, say hello, come here, say hi. So we did that, and then just felt his presence. It was loving and kind, and he was just so peaceful, and like you could just feel his love around us when we were like talking and like seeing. So I just love Bigfoot. I call him Sasquatch. Okay, so like I don't know, can you see?
Yeah, what's it say?
It says Bigfoot. It's got a little big. I traced Bigfoot. Bigfoot is a friendly and loving. No. Bigfoot is a friendly giant and loving. So I made it for the conference today.
Right, and then I put 3 different colored marbles again to see what happens out of that. And I'll be checking that probably in a week or 2 weeks. So it's very,
I'm glad the border's
that's
finally
right in front of the
opening
tree
back
structure.
up.
So I did that on
Because
purpose.
you're living so
Basically,
close. It's
my
too
thought
bad
was,
to not get to go over there.
this is art. What the one guy said, okay, because
So
I
about
either
40,
think
45 minutes.
I have just an interest in Bigfoot. It was inherited from my father. About 4 years ago, my father just, I don't know, it kind of just latched on to him. He kind of started doing Bigfoot poetry just out of the blue. And at first, I was like, I wasn't really into it. I mean, I was like, you're doing poems about Bigfoot? I wasn't really, I wasn't fascinated at first like he was. But then, as, months and months went by and I heard some of his Bigfoot poetry, it definitely grew on me. I started I definitely started getting into poetry more, and I started writing about, like, just stuff about Bigfoot, and more towards the abominable snowman, not Bigfoot. I was more interested in the abominable snowman, because I just liked snow better than the summer, so it was just more of an interest in that than Bigfoot. I think of his Bigfoot as something that he drew out. It isn't like, I wouldn't consider it a normal Sasquatch. I would consider it just kind of, everybody else has their own opinion on Bigfoot, and he kind of drew that out with his poetry. His opinion is just, kind of fascinating creature that is pretty much lives exactly like a human, but just doesn't do it like us, like lives in the woods. He doesn't like, come to something this big, and like he doesn't come into buildings. A big building is like a creek to him. Like a creek with a bunch of animals, like, having their like daily water break or something. I don't know. I just consider Bigfoot an animal. I mean, He's definitely one of my, like, if I had to rank my favorite animals, he's up there. But, I mean, most people consider him like, oh, he's a myth, you know, not real, blah, blah, blah. I consider him real. I don't really have a favorite thing. I mean, my favorite thing is that he's just mysterious, that the Sasquatches out in the world are mysterious. Yeah, I feel like Bigfoot is just another animal that whoever the maker of this world is, because there's nobody is, you know, really have exact proof that there's a maker, that it just wasn't proved. I feel like they just, you know, did another drop like all the other animals in the world, like another, I don't know what they're called, like a syringe drop of all those animals. It's just like a whole, it's just a bunch of different liquids in one whole entire, just glass. That's what I kind of think of it as. There's a bunch of animals everywhere. Bigfoot is just one of those ones, except just a tinier kind of drop. I just consider him a normal animal. That's...
Bigfoot meets a homeless man on Presque Isle. The man smells wild, the way a black bear smells after winter sleep, full of hunger, dizzy from root and
All right,
dark.
let me stop you there, Marty.
Bigfoot meets a homeless man on Presque Isle. The man smells wild, the way a black bear smells after a winter sleep, full of hunger, dizzy from root and dark. Bigfoot can taste loneliness on the man, a sweaty slick of days spent near the big water. Bigfoot meets a homeless man on Presque Isle. The man smells wild, the way a black bear smells after winter sleep, full of hunger, dizzy from root and dark. Bigfoot can taste loneliness on the man, a sweaty slick of days spent near the big water, hidden in pine, rooting through garbage cans for leftover French fries, brown apple cores still sweet and seeded, hot dog buns gone chlorophyll green. Bigfoot knows this man will die soon, has seen it before when moose with brainworm stumble off by themselves, or one eaglet shreds a feebler eaglet to get more perch and salmon from their mother's beak. even this close to lights and cars and houses, survival is all about being bigger, stronger, hairier, scaling trees for nested eggs, scooping silvery spot tails from superior surf, tearing haunches off mewling fawns. Bigfoot wants to help the man who has wandered onto this rocky thumb surrounded by wave, wants him to feel wanted as soft leaves or a run of smelt. As the man beds down for the night under a ribcage of branches, Bigfoot knuckles one tree trunk, knocks, knuckles again, knocks. He does this until he hears hollow, then scratch, chatter. He plunges his hand into the tree, extracts a panicked squirrel. Bigfoot snaps its neck like a cricket leg, holds the carcass to his chest, breathes the last pulses of its pebble heart, then grunts an ape prayer of thanks, a sound like a mother giving birth under a blazing comet to something necessary, needed. Bigfoot leaves the squirrel at the man's sleeping feet, where he'll find it in morning light. An offering of meat, blood, fur, to remind the man that the world loves him.
Let's see how far we can get up this way. Wait, it's gonna be loud here too. Wow, there's somebody. Okay, looks like Bigfoot with the surfboard.
That's the hardest part. It's hard to see.
I think that people are used to Bigfoot in the UP. Maybe not in the guise of Bigfoot, but I think people in the UP are used to dealing with really hard and difficult things, whether it's the weather, whether it's particular issues that sort of are inherent in the area because of its remoteness and everything, and isolation at times. People are used to having a Bigfoot in their homes. They're used to having dinner with Bigfoot. It's just one of those things in the UP especially. So when you mention Bigfoot to people in the UP, it's not something that I think that frightens them. They might laugh about it, but I think there's also something very, very, I don't want to say possessive about Bigfoot, but Bigfoot is just something that people in the UP live with and sort of welcome and embrace. I mean, you can't really go to a tourist place in the UP without finding something Bigfoot. And that's because people in the UP, and I think people, all over, deal with Bigfoots in their lives. And it just so happens that the UP, with its natural surroundings and everything, and the big lake and everything like that, it just sort of speaks more to the Bigfoot in all of us. And maybe Bigfoot's not afraid to come out in the open a lot more in the UP than anywhere else. 3. The fat kid on the playground has a mind of Bigfoot, a deep chromosomal urge to hide under the monkey bars. For Bigfoot does not have patience. He eats the sweetest blueberry before the grubs and pine cones, reads the last page of the mystery first.
How you doing?
There you go. That'll be the first shot of the movie. So tell me about tell me who you are and a little bit about documenting the unknown.
My name's Steve, and it was my idea to start a podcast. I'm sorry, let's start over.
That's all right. Take your time.
My name's Steve, this is my wife Karen, and it was my idea to start a website and a podcast called Documenting the Unknown. The idea behind it is to bring people together who've had experiences that lie outside of what people traditionally have. If a person has an experience with something that's unusual or unknown, oftentimes they can feel very isolated. And my thought is that we have the technology now to bring people together, and we don't understand or know what the person 3 blocks over, 3 miles over, a county over, or half a world away have experienced. And oftentimes when we make these connections with people who've had those experiences, it brings a great deal of relief to a person knowing that they're not alone. With the ability of the internet, we can document, investigate, and bring people together in a community.
Also, another really great thing with the technology we have today is we can instantaneously look into the research of what might have been happening when they had their event, their encounter, when they had their experience. So, for example, if you see a UFO, you can look up on your phone and pull up the report of every single airplane that is up in the sky, every single vehicle that is supposed to be in the sky at that time, and see if there's something up there that could be an explanation for anybody who's going to say you didn't see what you thought you saw. You can say, I checked this, I checked that, I checked the other thing. A lot of people don't know all the resources that are out there, and so being kind of technophiles, he more than I in most cases, he has a really good understanding of where you can look to find that kind of information. And I don't think most people understand what's out there and available to them. So we figured if we, mostly he, were to get stories from people, he could do the research and check into things for them and help validate their experiences for them so that they could understand that A, they're not alone, other people could be chiming in, and B, we've checked against all these other things, the weather conditions, the air flight patterns, or in the cases of Bigfoot, if anybody else had a site near there that might coincide to help support what they saw.
Covered your Bigfoot tracks.
Yes.
Well, my original idea came several years ago, and when I was a child, I was in my grandmother's cabin in Upper Michigan, and we heard this tremendous howl, and it was so loud. The only thing that I could imagine that had lungs that big was an elephant, and it just rattled the windows. It was so loud, and that was across the lake, and we'd never heard this before in the cabin, and my immediate reaction was, hey, Dad, Grandpa, what's going on? What is this? He goes, oh, that's a moose. Well, moose don't live up in that portion of Michigan. And,
not to mention they don't sound like that.
Oh, no, they don't. So a few minutes later, we heard the same howl, and it was on our side of the lake this time. And it was so loud and penetrating it sounded, or it felt rather, it felt like you could feel it in your guts. It felt like you were at a concert standing next to a speaker, and it just rumbled your insides. And again, my reaction to my parents and my grandparents were, do we have guns big enough to kill whatever's out there? Because we just might need to.
Oh, man.
And for years, that event was just a question mark above my head. I had no idea what that was. And I was listening to a podcast called Sasquatch Chronicles. And someone played what's called the Ohio Call. And I heard that and my blood ran cold. I immediately recognized the sound. And I was like, that's it. So all of a sudden I had context to what I had heard. And I thought, if that was a Bigfoot that made that noise, then I can look for that. And within a few minutes, I had pulled up a website and I had found a sighting that had happened about 5 miles away, and
From where he had been.
from where we had been at the time. And the description of the encounter was 2 men in a boat. They had had a Bigfoot approach them and scream at them. And it was the same type of description as far as that feeling, of that rumbling feeling. And it immediately validated my experience. I knew.
When it screamed at him, was it verbal words or was it just audible? Like sound?
Just
Okay.
like
a growl?
Yeah.
Wow.
And so immediately I knew that, wow, my experience had happened almost identically to someone who was just a couple of miles away within a week. So all of a sudden, that question mark was dispelled, and I knew absolutely what I had experienced. And it was through that use of technology, and I thought, I got to be that guy that brings people together and has that same
Connects the
experience.
dots, too.
Connecting the dots, that's exactly it.
Yeah. And I liked what you said earlier. It was when you carry one of those experiences for yourself, it can be a lonely experience until you find someone else that validates it or shares it with you. So if there's other people that want to have their own stories, or Bigfoot stories, UFO stories, whatever, how can they share them with you? And how can they connect the dots with you?
Well, if they just go to our website, which is documentingtheunknown.com. Hopefully that's pretty self-explanatory, because that's what we're trying to do, document the unknown. And there's a contact us form there. They fill that out and we will get in contact with them to see how they want to share their stories. We want them to share their stories in a way that's comfortable to them. So some people will write up their stories and email them to us. Some people want to be completely anonymous. Some people will let us record them so that we can do a podcast with them. We have the ability to handle it any way that they want so that they're comfortable. And he does the interviewing because he's much more charming than I am. And I do the technical aspect and edit it down so that it can go on the site.
So last question. I know you've heard a lot of stories and you have some of your own that you've heard. Any interesting Bigfoot stories? We're at the UP Bigfoot conference right now. And so have you heard any interesting stories today, or any just from your life, part of the connecting the dots?
Well, unfortunately, we're just getting started off.
Okay.
We have a lot more UFO stories than we do Bigfoot stories.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, unfortunately, in the Bigfoot arena, we don't have a lot of content yet. This is kind of why we're here. We're hoping
Maybe
to
after the town hall, it'll start to even out a little bit.
We're really hoping on that.
I will say that we do live in Wisconsin, and the kettle moraine in Wisconsin is supposed to be very rife with Bigfoot. And if you just drive through there, you can see the tree breaks just as you're driving up and down the road. They're everywhere.
One of the interesting things that we noted about that area, there's a gentleman who made a documentary called Finding Jay, and that's the area that he did his, or is currently doing his research in. And he mentioned that there were tree breaks that were very, very prominent, very high, 8 to 10 feet up. And we have a hobby where we go to all the different apple orchards in the state that we live in. There's 124 apple orchards in the state of Wisconsin. We've been to 120 of them. So
We love apples.
We've been all over the state. And when we heard that in the documentary, as we were driving through the Kettle Moraine, we noticed that absolutely was the case. And as we started driving around, we started looking at different types of, or the forest that were in different areas. And same type of forest, same type of trees.
Not the tree breaks.
No breaks.
Yeah, Kettle Moraine is unique in that.
The area where Jay was talking about,
Yeah.
rife with tree breaks right around 8 to 9 feet off the ground.
And for people that don't know what tree breaks are, can you describe that?
There are tales of Bigfoot basically taking trees, and we're not talking like little skinny trees, we're talking at least this big around, and just breaking off branches. And there is talk that in some areas they leave them as a sign to other Bigfoot of where one group's territory ends and another one's begins. So it's
like a territorial thing.
It's a territorial thing, and that's what we've garnered from the stories that we've heard. But I don't know if that's what it is, but I do know that we have seen a lot of them in that area where there are supposed to be just an innumerable number of Bigfoot sightings.
Cool.
Bigfoot's heart for Leela Forge. How do you measure it? A love as big as Kong, hungry for Fay Ray's sparrow breasts and silent movie eyes, her screams that dig into feral chambers of his ape chest, take root, blossom on that island of bones, or Karloff, staring through lizard lids, his bride full of lightning and terror, her soft moans stirring his anvil of blood, while outside peasants howl. Follow footprints on the shores of Gitchigumi, prehistoric leaps in the sucking sands. Listen for the roars of all the broken-hearted as tide creeps to your ankles. Count the waves, their hisses, filling night with breath and tongue and kisses.
Nice little view from your window here, your office. Huh?
I love this view, and you know, the thing that I love most about it is that I've had this huge church right across the street. So I mean, I've got God and Bigfoot, you know, like looking over me all day long. So,
oh yeah, down the block.
Yeah, it's beautiful, and you know, if I'm here late at night, sometimes bells ring, and I can hear that.
Mm. So you got some stuff to show me.
Yeah, I do. So the first thing here is my newest addition to my office. It's called a Himalayan salt lamp. It was I just got it the other day from a friend of mine who sent it to me as a sort of an office warming gift when I started my job here at Peter White Public Library, and it literally, this crystal is all salt. It's and actually I've done this where I've like wet my finger and you can taste the salt in it. And it's salt from the Himalayas. So I call it my Yeti lamp. just because the abominable snowman is supposedly in the Himalayas. So this is my Yeti salt lamp. And it's just this wonderful kind of glow that sort of fills my office all day long as I sit here. Sometimes I turn off the lights, and that's the only light that I use. So I'm sort of bathed in Yeti all day long. And then these other things here on my desk, these two things I got for my birthday. Let me just grab them, and then I'll turn back around here. So I always make these lists up of what I want for Christmas and Christmas and birthdays and stuff like that, and I always put weird stuff on it, like I want a trip to Italy, or I want to be abducted by aliens, or something like that. And one of the things that I always put on the list was that I wanted actual casts of Bigfoot's feet. So these two things that I got for my birthday one year are actually molds from supposedly actual Bigfoot tracks that were discovered by Roger Patterson and his friend Gimlin. Supposedly these are from the original casts that Patterson and Gimlin made of those tracks that were left by that specific Bigfoot. So you can purchase these. I did not know you could purchase these, but my sister, when she saw that I wanted actual casts of Bigfoot's feet, this is what she got me. And so this is the big feet. The big feet sit on my desk all day long, and they're just sort of a reminder to me of Bigfoot's presence in my life. And like we said earlier about God, this is sort of a reminder of me about God's footprints in my life as well. So yeah, that's another thing that I have. Now, Patterson Gimlin film supposedly is of a lady Bigfoot. So this is a lady Bigfoot's footprints. And you can tell because they're a little bit more delicate and small than the larger footprints of Bigfoot. But so that, yeah, these sit on my desk all day as a reminder that Bigfoot's always with me. So the poem was called Lady Bigfoot Kept Him in Her Cave. For some, the flash of deer tail in the woods, rabbit shadow in moss and moon, that small, that fast, that fleeting. It's the silver tongue of frost on grass, hungry for sun. And when sun comes, there is an instant of abandon, chimerical, ice and light and mist at once. Then a field of green tears. Few know love so large it eclipses bird and brook, wind and forest, reef and ocean. Love with granite arms and bare breath that swallows you like blueberries, big, round and sweet. See it, tall and wide as redwoods. Hear it, a wild howl, half human, half wolf. A universe of limb and muscle, the fierce gravity of lip, shoulder, and breast. That is the love he knows, ravenous. Every day it takes hold, leads him through the cave, through blackness so black, he loses skin, that organ of form and touch of ecstasy. Surrender is an ant and grub, fern and apple, cloud and rain, all of it. Five. Blackbirds dance in the green air. Bigfoot hurls stones up and up, reverse Perseids through the feathered ballet. 6. Bigfoot and a Syrian refugee walk into a bar. The bartender looks at the Syrian refugee and says, "We don't serve your kind in here."
I founded Cryptids, Anomalies, and the Paranormal Society, or Wisconsin CAPS. We founded in 2019, and I've been doing paranormal research for a number of years before that. And we found this location in southern Wisconsin that had Bigfoot activity, fairies, shamanic burial site, UFOs. The Dogman of the Beast of Bray Road is right down the road from this area, and it seemed to have everything for phenomena and stuff, what they consider like a window area for the high strangeness. So we started going down there, and I formed this group to investigate that specific area. And what happened is we started getting actual evidence, audio recordings, videos and stuff, and I thought, well, what do we do with this? You know, you can't write a book about audio. So I said, okay, well, we got to put it out in some form. So we started the YouTube show, which is on Wisconsin Caps on YouTube. And now we do a podcast. We do 6 full-length episodes a year on YouTube. And we even have a spin-off YouTube show for just certain Bigfoot activity and stuff that we've researched.
So is this all you do your own research, or do sometimes people bring stories to you?
We get stories from other people. Pretty much our whole team is specialized because we found that each topic has such a broad range of information that for one of us to focus on, we'll just say like Bigfoot and Dogman, for instance, you know, or the fairies or paranormal. For one of us to cover all of that is spreading yourself too thin. So each member of the team focuses on a specific area. We have an empath, we have a medium. I do all the cryptozoology stuff, the creatures and all that stuff. We have one person that just does research. We have a skeptic on our team that basically tries to debunk everything that we find before we put it out. And we're constantly changing like the dynamics of our team. We had a survivalist that came in and their whole job was to go in and look for like the stick structures of Bigfoot and stuff and say, well, this was a human made or not, and vice versa, or why it would have been made that way. So given those different broad backgrounds and research and stuff, when we approach a thing like Bigfoot, we can look at it as a fairy creature, which there's a lot of fairy lore about Bigfoot. We can look at it as an extraterrestrial and see if it fits into those. We can look into the paranormal, supernatural realm, and we can look at it from an aper or a biological primate species as well. So that helps us put all that into one basket. That's the main focus of our team.
Is this like a full-time gig for all of you now, like investigating, or do you have
we
to
all
work
have
other
full-time
jobs?
jobs.
Okay.
I work Monday through Thursday for my job, 12-hour days. And then on the weekends, we usually do like one investigation, or this weekend we drove up here yesterday. We have the convention today, and then tomorrow we're actually going to another investigation out in the woods for Bigfoot. So.
Have you had any experiences with UP kind of phenomena, whether it's Bigfoot or other?
Yeah, definitely. One of our main investigation sites, like I said, our Finding Hayden series, is all based on our research, our tests, our documentation, specifically at the Hayden Adventure. So the Hayden Adventure was in Craig and Barb Salk own 80 acres of hunting land in Upper Michigan, Menominee, Michigan, just outside. And in 2012, they hunt on this property. They have trail cams all over it. And in 2012, he captured a series of 3 game camp photos. And in the middle photo, there's this anomalous being that basically looks like the back of a Sasquatch. It's kind of kneeling in the picture. So he looked at these pictures, Craig Salk, and decided that he didn't know what this was, and people kept telling him, well, it could be a Bigfoot, all of his family and friends that he showed these pictures to. So finally, eventually, he sent it in to Finding Bigfoot. Finding Bigfoot replied the next day and said, hey, when can we come? Finding Bigfoot came out, did an investigation on his property. They did a full investigation. It's on the Super Youpers episode of Finding Bigfoot. And after the episode aired, he had, the newspaper came out, the news stations and stuff, and everybody wanted to see the property, see the evidence and stuff. So he actually ended up opening his property called the Hayden Adventure, because they named Bigfoot Hayden because Bigfoot's always hiding. They named him Hayden, and they opened the property up for people who wanted to come out and see the evidence, hear the stories, and let people decide for themselves. And he ended up opening his own convention, the Menominee Marinette Bigfoot Convention, which ran for 3 years. Didn't run in 2020, and he unfortunately passed away last year of cancer. And we did a big benefit and everything, my team for him, and now my team has actually taken over running the Hayden Adventure for the most part with his wife, and we give the tours now that he gave. So.
Wow. So if anybody wants to check out your show, or can you tell us again, where will we find that at?
Sure. We're on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and we have a website. The website is wisconsincaps.com, and if you search Wisconsin Caps or Caps Wisconsin on any of the other search platforms, you'll find all of us.
Bigfoot blessing. May sun melt March frost on your body, make you spark and flash with dew light, as you sing in deep alder, shimmy a bald eagle to wing. May a bull moose scratch your back with its palmate antlers. May your lice be few, your grubs plentiful, your scat be soft, without bones. May June rain brush the gnats out of your gums. May barn owl not talon away your pet vole, wolf and coyote not gnaw your dead father's ulna. May you get drunk on raspberry ferment, mushroom, taste hairy thigh on top of sugarloaf, under breast of moon. May a sweet worm surprise the middle of your crabapple. May you find roadkill dough for a midnight snack. Smell salmon dancing upstream for the drop of delicious salty roe. May autumn molt your coat to mustard and cranberry and squash. Fill your rooted cave with ripe plum, skunk scent. May your sister's furred ghost crater the creek mud with footprints, shiver midnight branches with her yawp and howl. May December calm your restless fingers with snow and snow and snow. The Eighth Day, a Bigfoot creation story. After God had taken a nap, he looked around at everything he'd made. Day, night, sky, sea, earth and grass and fruit, sun, moon, Jupiter, Pluto, milky gases and stars. All the four-legged, two-legged, hairy and scaled, the giraffe with its punchline neck, blue whales as big as his thumbs, the glittering serpent who would take the fall for the fall, bald eagles, cardinals, jays diving, circling the heavens of his nostrils, and man and woman shivering, stupid with curiosity, how they would take all these gifts, pull them apart, mine them, kiss them, hunt and sex them, burn, bomb, grind and poison them, war and famine them. Do all this to map the four corners of his mind, build a tower to touch his forehead. God saw that his work wasn't done. So he reached down, gathered redwood sapling, rhino tusk, mammoth hair, folded in magma and ice shag, the roar of asteroid dust, borrowed milk from the woman, nothing from the man, mixed those ingredients, molded them into something that was so much like him, he almost smashed it to fossil. But instead, he leaned down, coughed life into its lungs, told it to go forth, hide in cave, rainforest, Himalaya, to stay blurry on the border between known and unknown, himself lumbering along Bluff Creek. There's one poem. It's 13 Ways of Looking at Bigfoot. It's one of the first when I decided that I was going to write about Bigfoot, and it became, instead of just a preoccupation as a poet with me, it became a vocation with me in a way. Was when it was, and 13 Ways of Looking at Bigfoot was one of those poems. And with 13 Ways of Looking at Bigfoot, what we were doing, what I decided that I was going to do is I was going to look at Bigfoot in different guises and in different situations. It was a real, and of course it's based on the Wallace Stevens poem 13 Ways of Looking at a Blackbird. And so I thought, what better way of dealing with Bigfoot than approaching him from like 13 different ways, you know. And so I came up with these images, you know, that came into my head, and that's the way most poems come to me, is through image. So it was like writing 13 little haiku about Bigfoot. And it was a really easy way of approaching a really large subject, because I was able, it's sort of like looking at a certain gemstone and looking at each of the facets of that gemstone. And that's the way that I sort of approached that poem. I was taking Bigfoot and I was looking at him from as many sides as I could. 13 Ways of Looking at Bigfoot was my way of sort of trying to capture the entire picture. And if you read that poem, you'll see Bigfoot appearing in very different places and in and doing very different things in those 13 ways. But they're all Bigfoot, all 13 things that are in that poem. And when I wrote that poem, it was so easy for me because I knew at that point that I could write about Bigfoot, that Bigfoot could be all of these things, in one. And that's what that poem is about for me. It's about trying to capture all of these different moments in a lifetime or in an area or in a circumstance and looking at it from different perspectives. And sort of that's what I've been doing all along with these poems, I think, is just looking at different life experiences from the Bigfoot perspective. And so, I've got 13 ways of looking at Bigfoot, but whether this book that I'm writing turns out to be 40 different poems, whatever, then that's just 40 ways of looking at Bigfoot. So each, that's how that particular poem, 13 Ways of Looking at Bigfoot, came to me. First through the Wallace Stevens poem, which I love, and then when I realized that I could use that structure that Stevens had in that poem to approach Bigfoot, then sort of the Bigfoot world sort of opened up to me, and I was able to do that. 7. Bigfoot once fell in love with a black bear, loved how she clawed his back the way Callisto claws the stars. 8. The smell of skunk in the middle of the night. Bigfoot must be moving.
My name is Tammy Krasik, and I'm part of a group called the Upper Peninsula Bigfoot Sasquatch Research Organization. And we are a group of researchers, investigators, and all things Bigfoot. Rich gets over here, he can probably give you a little more information than me, but yes, there's some hot spots we have investigated in the Upper Peninsula. I don't want to give specific, areas, but
you had mentioned even Marquette, which is where we're from.
Yes, Marquette. There's a couple of areas up there that I've experienced some squatchy type activity. I'm from Escanaba, Michigan, so that area, there's some areas outside of Escanaba where I've experienced some what I'd consider squatchy activity. Actually, my report that I've done is from the Gladstone area, and that's on the national database.
So you did a report about some activity in the Gladstone area, and it got picked up for a national database? Is that what you said?
Actually, I had some experiences, wasn't sure what they were, sought out someone in the Bigfoot field, found Rich Meyer, sat down with him, did a formal interview. We went back out to the location. He used his researching skills because he's been in this a very long time and decided that my report was valid and filed it, and then it became added into the database. You can actually find it on the Bigfoot research database.
Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Like the actual, what happened?
Yes.
Okay. It was, I think, about 3 years ago now, out in the woods with a friend, and we were doing a night hike. And if I remember correctly, it was like the week of Thanksgiving, and it was an evening hike, a very popular hiking trail, about 12 miles outside of Escanaba, and we were just out for a night hike. We arrived in the parking lot. It was just starting to get dark, and when we got there and started walking through the trails, I thought I heard something that was walking on 2 feet. I grew up, so let's back this up a little bit. I grew up in a hunting family. I grew up in the country, so I'm very well versed on animals and what animal makes what noise. So I knew just from listing that this was something on 2 feet, not 4. So I was thinking to myself, what would be out here? Maybe other humans walking at night, you know. And then things get a little weirder from there. We continue to walk on one of the loops, and we see what now is considered, what I know of now is eye shine. We saw a light shining up in a tree, but too high for it to be somebody's like headlamp, or if someone was in a tree, they'd have to be pretty high up. And we saw this bright light, which was probably eye shine. And I'm saying probably because that's what it comes down to when you break things apart. It was probably eye shine. And then we just kind of kept walking. We both saw that. And we were out there for quite a while, just kind of walking all the trails. I'm going to skip over like the boring part because it's like we were out there for quite a while, just hanging out. We like to hang. The interesting part is when we started walking back towards the parking lot, like an hour later. And we were kind of talking a little bit about like, you know, is there somebody else out here? Because what was that light? There's no vehicles allowed out there, and it was kind of stationary in a tree. And then my friend is like, what do you think we heard, you know, like walking? And I said, it was on 2 feet. I said, there was no way that was on 4 feet. So as we're talking about this and trying to figure it out, we heard this, and the only way I can describe it is a screeching, like call that puts the hair up on the back of your neck. And we both looked at each other and went, what was that? And anybody who's been in the Bigfoot world says that when they hear this like guttural, screaming, screechy call that you go through your head and you go, it's not a deer, it's not a fox, it's not a cougar, it's not a bear, it's not a bird. You know, that's what you do. You like kind of go through and you're going, no, it's none of that. So what are we hearing from the area we just came from? Basically like calling, screeching, sounds like something's dying. So we were about a block away from our vehicles at that point. And we looked at each other and we were like, do we run? Should we walk? What should we do? So we just kind of casually kept walking, and we continued to hear this bellowing, guttural, like, call. And I want to say call because to me it felt like somebody was calling us back into the woods, the way it was sounding. And even right now, just going back to that moment, it's still to this day, it puts the hair up on the back of my neck because that was my first experience of like, what world am I entering into? What is this? So we get in our cars, we separated, she went home, I went home. She was living in Gladstone at the time, I'm obviously in Escanaba. So I get home and I start doing research on the internet, and it's about 1 o'clock in the morning now because this was a late night walk. So I'm doing research on the internet, you know, animal calls in the woods. And there was just this little voice that said, you know, maybe you should research Bigfoot calls. Because I'm like, I've heard about Bigfoot, but, you know, what are the chances I'm going to have an experience? So I did, because I did all these research on calls, and it didn't come up as any animal I knew or any animal I didn't think I knew or no. But when I hit Bigfoot calls, I started listening to different uploaded YouTube audio on Bigfoot calls. I came across one that was almost exact to what we heard in the woods just 2 hours earlier. So I'm texting my friend and I'm like, I'm going to send you this clip on YouTube and I want you to listen to it. I want you to tell me what you think. She comes back to me and says, that's what we heard. I said, okay, we have confirmation that we both heard the same thing and we both think it's Bigfoot. So now what?
So how long have you been playing the organ?
I've been playing the organ since I was 18, so we're going on 40, well, a little less than 40 years now.
I should have played it that softly to begin with.
Bigfoot gives thanks after Gerhard Manley Hopkins. He doesn't chase down a turkey, wring its pink neck like a wet dish rag, gut it with his thumb, cook it in sun and fly and maggot for days, serve it with sides of chewed yam, moose marrow, fermented pumpkin guts, green with thyme, smelling, strong as a bear den at winter's end. He doesn't smooth his hair with mud, brush his teeth with fresh milkweed, cram himself into a church pew beside blue-haired widows who look at his gorilla arms and long to feel their dead husbands' dark embraces in bed at night again. Doesn't stand when the organ starts breathing music, raise the siren of his voice to "Now thank we all our God," until the stained glass rattles and fractures, letting seams of pure white stitch all gathered with the shook foil of the world. No, his way is simpler. A morning glory leaning toward day, unfolding, shaking off the teary dew of darkness. Stand outside at dawn or dusk. The bent world is charged with his hairy gratitude. In the long-legged shadows of first and last light, as they stretch and stretch and stretch down the street, across railroad trestle, through hayfields, cornfields, into pines and poplar, further and further and further, mountain, swamp and lake, canyon and cave, ocean, glacier, savanna, desert, until at last they have touched it all the grandeur of deep down things. I really hope that if Bigfoot does exist, and I'm not saying I believe that he does exist or doesn't, I don't believe he does exist, but, you know, say that Bigfoot does exist, I hope that he never gets captured. I hope that he stays out there, you know, peering at us through the woods and staying away from us, because you know what, human beings, you know, Bigfoot should stay away from human beings. He doesn't belong with us. Just like all of these issues that I've been writing about in my poems, they're difficult. They're things that make life difficult, and you know, maybe they do belong out in the woods, wild and free, as opposed to wrestled down and tamed. You know, why would you tame wonder? Why would you tame mystery? I mean, that's just a stupid idea. You know, you want mystery, you want wonder, you want that kind of wildness. If you lose that, then what do you have? You know, you have vanilla pudding. That's what you have, instead of, you know, like wild mushrooms. You know, it just doesn't make sense. So keeping Bigfoot wild and untamable, and you know, keeping this book has been wild and untamable for me. I've been writing it for so long, and I think I have a structure. I think I have, you know, like, oh, I see the end in sight, and then Bigfoot sort of looms in from another direction, and suddenly I'm off chasing him in another way. So maybe I'm just like, maybe I am a Bigfoot hunter in a way, a poetic Bigfoot hunter. I just chase him through all these words and all these lines and images. And maybe I'm chasing a shadow. I don't know. But it's a wonderful chase, if that's what I'm doing. 9. On a foggy evening, it's easy to mistake Bigfoot for God, strolling through Eden. 10. If you meet Bigfoot hiking in the mountains, don't stare at his feet.
My name is Ken Gerhard, and I'm a cryptozoologist residing in San Antonio, Texas. And cryptozoology actually refers to the study of unknown animals, or that is animals and strange creatures that are unrecognized by the scientific establishment. So oftentimes I focus on really weird things like the Loch Ness Monster and Chupacabra, Mothman, and Bigfoot.
Okay, cool. And you've written some books and
Yeah.
done some work?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm also an author, and I've written 6 books on the subject of unknown animals, and that includes Menagerie of Mysterious Beasts.
Cool, yeah, you can show them to the camera, please.
That's kind of a variety pack of different things I've investigated. A lot of lesser known creatures in the world of cryptozoology, like giant snakes and black panthers and thunderbirds that people have reported. And then, of course, I've written The Essential Guide to the Loch Ness Monster, which is about not only Nessie, but other similar lake monsters and sea serpents around the world. And then I'm very proud that my book, The Essential Guide to Bigfoot, has been critically acclaimed by the Bigfoot community, and it's, it means a lot to me, because there's a lot of people that I respect that think this is a pretty solid book. But it's not just my research, it's the research of all of the leading experts and investigators in the Bigfoot field for decades.
She brought it all together in this.
Yeah, this
Okay.
is a consensus opinion of dating back to the 1950s. I mean, there are guys that spent decades, 40 years looking for Bigfoot. They dedicated their whole life to it, and they gathered a lot of evidence and interviewed a lot of witnesses, and a lot of that's been forgotten in today's day and age. So it's those guys, and then it's a lot of the current leading Bigfoot investigators who I'm honored to work with, most of the leading Bigfoot investigators around the country. So.
Is that what makes this book different? That you brought in so many other voices, or what makes this one different? Because there's a lot of people that write about Bigfoot.
Yeah,
how's this one?
And I
unique?
honestly, I've been investigating Bigfoot for 45 years since I was a kid, but I never had a desire to write a book about Bigfoot, because honestly, there are a lot of really good books if you know where to look about the subject of Bigfoot. But in this day and age, with kind of the way things are going with social media, I find that there's just a lot of misinformation floating around out there with regard to Bigfoot. And so people will hear something and then they'll misinterpret it, or, So anyway, so I think as controversial as Bigfoot is as a subject, I think it's important to keep it real and keep the facts straight. So Bigfoot investigators need to know exactly the dates, the places, of all the major events, the major players. And it's real history. It's the history of Bigfoot research, and it's led us to our current knowledge, or presumed knowledge, or understanding of what these things are, if they exist.
What's the next step in the evolution of Bigfoot world?
Well, I think the most promising thing, in my own opinion, in terms of what's happening now in the Bigfoot field, is technology in eDNA, environmental DNA collection. Because scientists can now basically collect samples of water and soil and even air, and then they're able to extract or filter out all of the biological material, which is usually stuff that's been shed by animals. And they can actually look at that biological material, and they can map the genetic sequence of, dozens, hundreds of thousands of animals that have come in contact with that soil or that water recently. So to me, that could be a really big step in terms of proving if Bigfoot exists or not. Because if we know a spot where Bigfoot's been seen, left a footprint or anything like that, we have that connection, and we can extract DNA out of that, and who knows what it's going to look like. It could be closer to Homo sapiens, it could be closer to another species of great ape, or in between. So
I'm sure you get it a lot. A lot of people say, well, if there's Bigfoots all over the place, how come nobody has captured one or got one? What do you think about that? What's the reasoning behind that?
Well, I'm very objective, and I pride myself on being objective and thinking critically. So that's actually a great skeptical argument. Why haven't we found them? With all of the people looking and all the technology we have. The only answer I have to that is that A, they seem to be incredibly rare animals. Very, very rare. There may only be a few thousand spread across the entire continent of North America. So they're basically critically endangered at this point. They seem to be very intelligent, not as intelligent as humans, but intelligent enough to know that they don't want to be found by us, or they direct us as their greatest, they view us as their greatest threat. And they've adapted behavior patterns to avoid us. So they live in the remote wilderness areas we don't go. They seem to be mostly nocturnal, active at night. They seem to move around a lot. All of these seem to be adaptations to not be found by us. And they're very good at apparently like hiding behind trees and just camouflaging themselves. So all of that is actually, I know it seems magical and whimsical to a lot of people, but so were a lot of animal characteristics and behaviors before science figured out why animals are able to do amazing things. So
yeah, I mean, it's not that far fetched. You know, the military. A lot of it's describing the way a military, stays camouflaged, stays hidden, moves without other people knowing.
It's almost strategic, right?
Absolutely.
Like, okay,
yeah.
You're not going to see me.
Well, and another possibility, of course, is that they have found some, but it's been covered up.
Yeah,
What do you think of that?
I'm personally not a huge advocate of conspiracy theories. Conspiracy theories, in my mind, well, first of all, there's a lot of psychological reasons. If you do the profiling, there are certain types of people that need conspiracy theories. It's kind of the guy that feels like he's gotten the raw end of the stick, and there has to be an explanation why things aren't going his way. But moreover, if you think about a conspiracy as vast as covering up Bigfoot, that would have to involve potentially hundreds or thousands of people keeping a secret over decades. And I just don't think that that's possible. I think at some point that someone would have spilled the beans. I mean, that's just the way, it's just human nature. Not so judgmental, but people, especially a secret like that, it would be out. So, I don't know. I don't necessarily advocate now, I will say one thing, which is on some level, the government may acknowledge that it's possible that Bigfoot exists, and if so, they don't want it to be found because it would completely disrupt everything in terms of the economic, sociological foundation of everything. Everything would just get shaken up. It's such a mind-shattering proposition that, there's another intelligent human-like species out in the woods, that we've been living alongside. So they may not encourage people to go look for it, or whatever. I have had some park rangers that have come by my camps from time to time and told me off the record, they're here. I'm not going to say that on record, but, so that's not the highest level of government, but those are people that work for the government that have acknowledged, there's something out here,
So tell me about, you were telling me doing some work for the History Channel, and you were telling me a little bit about this Wolfman series. Can you tell me about this?
I'm honored to have appeared on a number of TV shows. This is a special I did for the History Channel back in 2010. They still show it sometimes around Halloween. It's called The Real Wolfman, and it's about the closest thing to a real werewolf that's ever been documented. It was called The Beast of Gévaudan, and it was lurking the French countryside. Southern France is very rural and mountainous back in the 1760s, and this animal allegedly attacked or killed anywhere from 60 to 100 people. And it was described as looking like a wolf, but bigger and longer tail, pointier ears, and it was very cunning and elusive, and it attacked and dismembered a number of mostly small children and women in really diabolical ways, decapitations, disembowelments. So I don't know, it's a really weird story, but the animal was eventually shot, allegedly, and when I was over in France investigating this, I saw the official death certificates of the victims. I stood in a cemetery of its victims. So it's a real thing that happened, but it's a bona fide mystery. So,
wow.
And I'm also, I'm currently on a History Channel show called I'm currently on a History Channel show called The Proof Is Out There, which is basically just a kind of fun thing where we analyze different videos on YouTube and stuff that people claim are Bigfoot or other unexplained things, and we just kind of give an opinion. So.
Well, how often do you appear on that show? Is it like a weekly thing?
It should be appearing every week. I think it comes on before Ancient Aliens on Fridays, but you know how networks re-air
You shoot
things.
several at a time, and then they kind of break them into episodes. Okay,
yeah, I'll
makes
do like
sense.
a grueling all-day 7 or 8 hour interview where I have to comment on all the videos, and then they use 5 seconds of that in a TV show.
So you're sort of the intelligent skeptic. Is that your role on the show?
My role is there's a bunch of very intelligent commentators and analysts on the proof is out there, but I'm one of the cryptid specialists. So whenever there's a alleged Bigfoot, lake monster, chupacabra, or anything like that, they ask me my opinion about that stuff. So it usually has to do with animals, but there are other. There's at least one other cryptozoologist on the show, and there's an actual bona fide marine biologist and a wildlife biologist. So it's a bunch of different people.
What do you know about mysteries in the UP? A lot of us are from the UP up here. You're at the UP Bigfoot Festival right now, the 2021. Where's your knowledge in the UP lie?
Well, I was born in Michigan actually, but I only lived here for a year, so I don't remember much about that. But my understanding of Michigan, I haven't done a lot of field research here per se. I think you obviously have a lot of Bigfoot activity. What most people don't realize is that Michigan is ranked in the top 7 in terms of Bigfoot sightings out of the United States. You get Oregon, Washington, California, Florida, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Texas, Michigan. So 7 or 8.
Wow.
So Michigan gets a lot of Bigfoot reports, mostly from the northern section in the UP, obviously, because you have really dense forested wilderness areas with lots of resources. So a lot of Bigfoot activity. There's something called the Dog Man, which has been reported from Manistee National Forest, which is kind of like a werewolf type creature that, who knows, it exists, but it's very well known from that area, or sightings are. And then I've investigated reports of monstrous birds called thunderbirds, which can be found in Ojibwe Native American legends. I think they're known as the Chegwe or the Pinese. But there are modern sightings across Michigan of these giant, massive, unknown birds. So, who knows?
Well, tell me this: if anybody wants to connect with you, wants to follow up with your work, where would they go? You got a website, or you got email where people can reach out? Can you?
Yeah, thanks for asking. I have a website, kengerhard.com. And
Can you spell that?
KengerHard.com.
Okay.
And I'm also on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. So I can be found pretty much anywhere. So
Cool. Awesome. Well, thanks for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it.
Bigfoot gets mistaken for John the Baptist at the Church of Corpus Christi. Perhaps it's the grasshoppers or smell of wild honey in his beard. It could be the camel humps of his shoulders, dirt crusted under his toenails and creases of his soles. Or his arms, how they look long enough to reach the clouds, snatch that descending holy gull, wring from its feathers every last drop of God, then baptize his mouth with its meat. It may be his eyes that 40 day in the desert without food famish, how he watches the priest's fingers raise a white moon up and up. Bigfoot huffs the air, fills his nostril caves with the promise of flesh and blood. He stands, moves into the aisle, strides as wide as the Jordan, and the faithful fall back, watch with Pharisee interest his hirsute advance. Bigfoot reaches the apse, towers above the priest's green chasuble, eyes the thin wafer of light, pinched, lifted to his black lips. He tilts his head to the vaulted ceiling, opens his mouth, makes a second coming noise that tears the temple veil, shivers sand and tree limb, splits the heavens in two, and the flock beholds what a voice crying out in the wilderness sounds like. Bob Dylan's singing makes Bigfoot miss his mother's lullabies. 12. After After the rains, there are footprints up and down the riverbank. Bigfoot still searching for the goddamn ark before the flood comes.
Everything is picture. The second picture is this picture. It's down in the corn. It's on its knees. Its hands are in the corn. It looks demonic. I've seen this on TV. Almost like a right here. This is not a typical Bigfoot. Usually you don't see the ear of a Bigfoot. Had a pointed ear inside. You see his forehead. And then really creepy looking picture. Now you're going to ask me, is this a portal right here that came to? That's not a portal. Here's how I got the picture. And here's what happened. I beg you stop. Please, you have this in cards in the airline. I will give you money. I will have you sign on to school. There you go, sir.
Oh, thank you.
I'm Charlie Raymond. I'm the founder of the Kentucky Bigfoot Research Organization in Kentucky. I've been researching Bigfoots for over 3 decades. Over 300 eyewitness reports I've documented. Law enforcement, park rangers, housewives, children, you name it. I try to meet them in person, try to debunk their stories, and I only put the legit stuff, of course, on my website, KentuckyBigfoot.com. And we got wonderful researchers in our organization. My lovely wife, Lindsay. She's one of our lead investigators. Don Bigfoot Neal. He's an ordained minister, and he squatches at night and preaches the gospel by day. And I've got some other researchers like Terry Thomas. He does the sketches that the witnesses describe, and we put the sketch with the story. So if you go to the website, you can read the story and look at the sketch of what the witness encountered. And he drew the sketch for my book, which looks like a Bigfoot. Close.
Yeah. Awesome.
And
Bluegrass Bigfoot.
this was actually based on multiple accounts of a Bigfoot. So we like to gather as much data on these witnesses as we can, so we could put pins in a map, then go there and try to obtain casts and vocals and even video evidence. So witness encounters are very crucial to our research. It paints a picture. You get the witness testimony, you get the hair samples, the vocals, the casts, maybe some photos. Hopefully we could gather enough evidence to prove their existence without killing one. That's our goal.
Yeah, I noticed on here on your sign, non-kill group investigating. So that's a commitment you have.
Oh, 100%.
If you come across one. What about capturing one? Would you be willing to try to capture one, or just would you rather document it with maybe video or camera?
I think it'd be hard to capture one. They're super intelligent. Because people ask, can you trank one? With a tranquilizer. Good luck. I mean, you're going to have one in your scopes with it ready to go. And I've interviewed witnesses that had cameras around their neck, and they did not have time to get the camera up. They're that quick.
Too smart, too fast.
Exactly. Too smart, too fast. So it's going to be hard to trank one, capture one in a trap. They're too smart. It's hard to get a picture of them, as you know.
Yeah.
So we want to protect them in their habitat. And I mentioned this in my presentation. Why do you need to protect them? They're doing just fine on their own. We need to protect their habitat. Deforestation, urban sprawl, their habitat is dwindling. Pretty soon, they're not going to be able to reproduce. There's too much inbreeding and so forth. They're going to go extinct. In some areas, like Kentucky, most likely in the next 100 years. They're going to be gone. Now, the Pacific Northwest is different. You go that direction, there's a lot more wilderness. They could survive longer, maybe.
How many would you say are in Kentucky, if you had to guess?
That's a tough one. I get that question a lot.
Okay.
But I will tell you this, and they tend to stay in one county or two counties. They don't migrate to Tennessee or Florida for the winter.
Really?
Because over decades, I've interviewed witnesses who describe the same physical characteristics, like Adair County, the varmint. This creature has a grayish abdomen region, and multiple witnesses have seen this creature with that gray region right here over a decade or more, almost 2 decades. In Anderson County, the famous story of Howdy. Howdy's one that walks out of the woods and raises his arm. And multiple people have seen this behavior of it's raising its arm. Now again, that's seen over decades. He's staying in that same area. So the Bigfoots tend to remain unless we cut their home down. We come in and build shopping centers and etc. They're gonna move. So I really want to protect some of their forest if we can. Maybe have laws to protect them as well, from being shot.
Yeah, I read that on the back here, that's one of your passions. Do you have any suspicions about, as far as where they sleep or how they travel? Because it's very rare that somebody even gets a chance at a photograph with them. Would that be correct?
Yeah, and I didn't talk about this today, but one thing I put out there, they could sleep in a polyphasic sleep cycle, which is a multiple phase sleep cycle, like every 4 hours. There's a lot of research on humans and the brain and the mind, how beneficial it is to sleep more often. There's a lot of physical benefits of sleeping more often than just one time like we do. So there's some benefits there. Another benefit is, which I believe, they're less likely to be walked up on if they're sleeping all day. So say they sleep 4 hours and they have a sentry stand guard, which a lot of people believe. They have one standing guard doing the loud tree knock when humans come close. I've experienced that home run knock, and I believe it's one standing guard during the day because we get sightings in the daytime. So they're not just nocturnal. We get sightings all the time in the daytime. So I do think they might sleep in a polyphasic sleep cycle. Now there's certain times they're more active that I've documented. When we're asleep, 3 o'clock to 5 o'clock in the morning, they're very active. Lots of reports. Around dusk, lots of reports around dusk. In the mornings, early morning when the sun's coming up, 5, 6 up until 8, 9, 10, they're active. Middle of the day, it tends to be a little bit more quiet. Maybe that's when they're sleeping, take a nap, and then they're more active at dusk. It's hard to say, but I do believe they don't set up shop, they don't play house. They don't make a structure that's permanent. They sleep anywhere they can. Cave, an abandoned house, in a divot with leaves thrown over them. So they're super smart and they know how to avoid us.
Yeah.
They really do.
Last question.
Yes.
Okay, you're at the UP Bigfoot conference. What do you know about Bigfoots in the UP?
Oh, Michigan?
Have you heard anything about them?
Lots of reports.
Okay.
Of Michigan. Yeah. The dog man, of course, Bigfoot. I heard a lady here saw 2 of them a year ago. This lady up front, she's not told anybody her story yet. Yeah, you need to interview her. A very credible witness sitting in the blonde hair.
2 of them.
She saw 2 in the blonde hair up there. So go talk to her. She saw one a year ago. She's not told anybody about it.
We already heard about your book. If people want to follow your work, is this your website here, KentuckyBigfoot.com?
Yeah, KentuckyBigfoot.com. I got videos and audio clips I've captured. My book is on Amazon. So if you want to purchase my book on Amazon, if you want an autographed copy, KentuckyBigfoot.com. I got a little link. I will sign this for you and mail you one directly.
Awesome. Cool.
And Facebook and Instagram.
And you're on Facebook and Instagram. Okay,
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
You're welcome.
Charles. Appreciate it.
I live in Boyne City, Michigan, and I had a very interesting experience with
a Bigfoot. And my husband and I were just having a normal day, decided to go look at a house for sale over in Bel Air. And we were driving past a farmhouse on Dorenzi Road. And I've always admired it, so I was looking at that. And I noticed two figures coming down the hill. And so my first thought was it was just two men, probably farmers, checking the fields. It was April 24th, so it was about that time to start thinking about the fields. That was my mind trying to make sense of what I was seeing, because then I realized they were huge, and they were all black. They moved as humans. They were not bears. My husband and I, outside quite often, we've seen bears. He hunts. We can identify most animals in the woods. And I have seen a large male bear. And when he ran, he had his legs up like this and narrow. And he ran a few steps and he dropped and took off traditional on all fours. And so this is definitely not bears. They swung their arms, their legs. Like I said, originally I thought it was two big men. My husband is 6'5". We have a brother-in-law that's 6'7", so I'm used to seeing tall people. And from that, I would estimate that the larger of the two was about the 6'5". The second one that was smaller was probably 6'1". And about the moment that I was really realizing what I was seeing, they either could sense it somehow, or they spotted the car as my husband was driving by, and they just turned and kind of just glided off into the pine trees, and the smaller one disappeared first into the pines, and then the bigger one went behind another row and disappeared into taller pines. And so someday I'm going to get the nerve to knock on that door, ask them at least if I can go measure the pines, and I might be brave enough to ask them if they've seen anything. So it was a really cool experience. Unfortunately, my husband didn't get to really see them. We turned around and tried to find them again, but we never have seen them again.
Slow dancing with Bigfoot in Greenwich. This has been Bigfoot's stool, even before he grunted, handed Marcia P. that brick when the Betty Badges pounded on the door, shouted, "Police, we're taking the place," the night Judy was buried. Now he nurses slow gins, listens to Piped In Over the Rainbow, enjoys its tongue-in-cheekness, homage to friends left behind. Vinny the Cheek, black-haired and beautiful, who used to call him Honey, scratch his shoulders with cattail fingers. Angel from the Bronx in fishnets, heels, baked him brownies, told him over and over how the carpet of his arms reminded Angel of his grandfather in Puerto Rico. Montana Bill, quiet as a cow, sat beside Bigfoot, inhaled his fishy cologne, ate pretzels, cried about the way his dad's denim jacket smelled like horse and coffee in the mornings. So many more, so many, lost in the Reagan years, now just forgotten patches on an immense blanket. Bigfoot is at home here. Nobody stares at the taxi of his back, piles of peanut shells in his beard, on the mountain of his belly. He doesn't have to hide in the bathroom, stare through windows, on the limb between Homo sapien and erectus, evolution and myth. He sits at the bar among reflections in mirror, in bottles, dozens of Bigfoots spinning, swimming, shimmering. Every once in a while, someone buys him a drink, asks him to dance, walks him to the dim floor, rests a head against his leathery breast, sways to George Michael, Etta James, Careless Whisper, or At Last. Slow, always slow songs. Ignorance is kind. There's no comfort in the truth. After the music ends, his partner will lean in, press lips to his cheek, thank him for the dance, for being who he is, king of the forest, arm in arm with Dorothy, lumbering toward the Emerald City. I saw Bigfoot walking down the street one morning. He reminded me of my dead brother out for his morning smoke. I've been living with Bigfoot for, going on like 4 years now. And that doesn't even count the 2 years before that I wrote the first Bigfoot poem before I came back to Bigfoot. So maybe Bigfoot's been with me for 6 years. Bigfoot, I would miss Bigfoot. I really would. I mean, if that big guy sort of walked out of my life and I've never seen him again, there would be something really missing. But that being said, do I see an end to this project in sight? I would like to say yes. Every poet has obsessions that they return to all the time, over and over and over and over. Bigfoot has been that for me. And but I also want to bring Bigfoot to a certain point, chase him to a certain place, and maybe at that place be able to say goodbye to him or wish him well and let him walk off into the woods, and he go his way, I go my way, but then I would have that manuscript, that book of poems that would remind me of a wonderful friendship that I've had for that period of time, however long it is. But it's friends are sort of like that. They drift into your lives. You're with them for a wonderful period of time. You do wonderful things together. You share wonderful experiences together. And then sometimes friends just drift out of your life and go someplace else. And but those kinds of friends that you have are always with you. And I also find that those kinds of friends eventually come back into your life in some way. And I honestly believe that if and when I publish this book about Bigfoot and sort of put that part of my poetic life aside, I have a feeling that one of these days there's going to be a knock on my door. I'm going to go and open that door, and Bigfoot is probably going to be standing there, and he's going to want to come in, sit down at the writing table with me, and he's going to hand me a pen, and he's going to make me write. And when that happens, there'll be another Bigfoot poem.